Thank you. Good morning. My name is Kristen Oliveri, and I'm the editor of Crain Currency. It is my absolute pleasure this morning to introduce you to Jason Palmer. Palmer is a candidate for President of the United States. Prior to his presidential run, he served in executive and leadership positions in Microsoft, Kaplan Education, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and as the lead impact investor at New Markets Venture Partners. New Markets focuses exclusively on double bottom line investments in innovative, high impact, early and growth stage education and workforce technology companies. During his tenure at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he led innovation efforts to improve the outcomes of disadvantaged college students by investing in colleges, universities, and entrepreneurs. I'd like to welcome to the stage Jason Palmer.
Thank you, Kristen. Now, you all are probably wondering, why is a Democrat who's running for president of the United States at an activist investor conference, okay? If you don't already have out your phones to video this, you probably should, because it's very rare that a Democratic candidate would come here to something like this to talk to you. But first, I want to tell you, I'm a lot more like you than you realize. So I went to Harvard Business School and graduated in 1999. I've started or invested in 30 companies over the last 2 decades. I try to own 5 to 20% of those companies and try to change their trajectory substantially, both to make more money and to have more impact. And I'm super proud of the fact that our firm has outperformed the S&P 500 by 3% over the last 15 years across 4 funds, and that's DPI, so actually paid back to our LPs. Secondly, I'm running for president because I believe we need an activist outsider to shake things up. We have a duopoly that is leading things in Washington right now that has made it completely dysfunctional. Now, most of you are probably like me, and as a pragmatic business person, you try to avoid political conversations because you might get pulled a little too far this way or a little too far that way. You may lose some LPs. But I want to tell you that if we're going to have a government that works for the people and for capital, you can't tune out. You actually have to get involved in some way. So how can you do that? You may have heard, how many of you have even heard of me? I'm kind of an unknown candidate for president. How many of you have heard of me? Like just a few, okay? So I recently won the caucus in American Samoa and became the first candidate to defeat an incumbent president, Joe Biden, in 44 years. So I'm a little bit more well-known at this point. I hear some clapping in the room. And I wear a purple tie to try to show that I believe great ideas can come from all sides of the political spectrum: Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, and Green. And that's because we got to get past this problem in our national politics where you're all on one team or the other, and the crazies are leading the show. 80% of us are actually in the middle and want common sense policies. We want a government that works, and we want it to stay out of our way so that we can make money, make the world a better place, and live our lives. So, how many businesses do you know that could lose money for 22 years in a row and keep running up massive deficits and debts, and the CEO and the management team wouldn't be thrown out? That's what we've got right now with the 2 major parties and their duopoly. So this week, I'm actually announcing, and you're one of many places where I'll announce it, that I'm creating a new organization called Together! That's going to attempt to bring together the 80% of us that are actually purple and that really believe we need to have common sense policies to move our country forward and take the government back from the crazies. And I want you to know, I understand capitalism. I'm a believer in conscious capitalism, which we're going to talk about in a second, Kristen and I. And there is a way to make it so that America believes in business again, that the Democratic Party believes in business again, and that business can be, and already is, honestly, a force for good in the world. So let's chat.
Thanks, Jason. Let's just start with defining what you believe to be conscious capitalism.
So conscious capitalism doesn't even have a Wikipedia page right now, by the way. But if I achieve my objective over the next few months, there will be a Wikipedia page, and it'll talk about how I've advocated for this term. So conscious capitalism is an economic philosophy that believes that business can be a force for good. It's stakeholder capitalism. So businesses are not just in business to make a profit. They can also have other impact metrics that they're focused on. Those metrics can include environmental, social. In my case, I invest in companies that are trying to improve education and workforce outcomes. So more kids graduating from high school, more kids graduating from college, a lot more kids getting these certificates and credentials that help you get to the middle class. And the more we metricize these things and make those metrics just as important as profitability metrics, the more we can invest in that. And I didn't learn this or invent this myself. This is a movement that I've been part of for 20 years now, and about $1 trillion in capital is now in impact investing or conscious capitalism, B corporations. It goes pretty deep if you want.
So let's talk about why the presidential run.
Probably because I'm a little bit crazy. I have been compared sometimes to people like Elon Musk, although I think I'm a lot more calm and level-headed than him. I've started multiple companies. I'm not afraid to speak truth to power. You know, I have lost everything once with one of my companies, and who knows, I might lose everything again trying to do this. But if we don't speak up, like, our government and the United States will no longer be the world's leading superpower, and capitalism could go, in a way, out of business and be replaced by a very different economic philosophy. So we have to find this balance. And I'm, focused on this for the next 10, 25 years if it takes that.
So as a business person, and now you're obviously in the political realm too, we learn a lot from our mistakes, our failures. What would you say the biggest failure you've had to date, and how does that sort of shape who you are now as a presidential candidate?
Did we talk about that? I think we did talk about this before. So in my fourth company, which I don't talk about that much, I started a company, co-founded it with 3 classmates from Harvard Business School. We raised $22 million in venture capital in 1998, 99, 2000. And we basically built Facebook, but it was 7 years too early. Luckily, there was nobody that played me in the movie, because I don't want to be compared to the Winklevosses. But
what was it called?
It was called Mascot Network. We were at 100 colleges and universities. Students were using it to communicate. There was a feed. There were Facebook directories. The whole thing was there. But we created it too early. And by the way, in my career, I've invested in many things too early. I invested in a virtual reality company in 2011. I invested in basically the iPad for education back in 2002 with Bill Gates. So I might be early again with conscious capitalism right now. But Mascot Network failed. I lost everything that I had owned, and then I had to start back over again from the 3 companies. I invested it all in Mascot and lost it all.
That's incredible.
And I have built it back at this point. And now I'm investing it all and trying to do what I'm doing right now.
And I think part of what you're doing now on the campaign trail, and you've said this to me before, is speaking truth to power. And you're doing that both politically and in the business world. But that can have its drawbacks. People don't always like hearing truth, which I think comes to your common sense theme that we'll get to. But tell us a little bit about the tweet that might have been heard around the world.
Well, I don't know if it was heard around the world, but I got in trouble recently, actually a couple years ago, before the campaign, because there was a company in my space. It's a company called Alt School. You probably all haven't heard of it, but Mark Andreessen and a bunch of other people in Silicon Valley, who I respect greatly, actually, invested in this company, and the idea was to completely disrupt education and kind of put traditional schools out of business. And I've learned over the years that you actually have to invest at this intersection where it's helping schools become more innovative, working with charter schools. Like, to make money in education technology is super hard. Most people lose their shirts in education technology. And anyway, Mark Andreessen and his friends lost $176 million in Alt School, to which I tweeted to my 100 followers on Twitter, "We all knew this was a terrible idea, and here's why." And I explained why the company would fail. And that got blown up because it got to Mark Andreessen and a lot of other people who hated on me. It resulted in a New York Times article. It was very difficult, actually, because I realized I screwed up. I screwed up. I did know why the company failed, but you never should shit on a company on the day that it dies. That was completely wrong of me. And so I apologized on Twitter, which I think never happens, and said that I was, I still believe I was very wrong to tweet that on the day the company died. When you start a company and you invest 7 years of your life into it, it's your baby. And even if it was a bad idea, they're in the arena, and I should have respected that.
If you had to do it today, how would you have done it differently?
I still kind of want to tell truth to power all the time, but I'm learning how to be a little bit more balanced in that. And so I just was on TV a week ago on CNN, and people asked me, what would you tell Joe Biden if you could tell him? And I said, I would tell him he should step aside for the next generation of leaders. And maybe it's not me, maybe it's Gretchen Whitmer, maybe it's Jared Polis. These are Democratic governors who actually govern from a purple place as well. And I don't think many politicians are willing to say things like that too. But I'm trying to find the right way to say it's about the idea, it's about the principle, and we shouldn't have two 80-year-olds running for president, roughly speaking. We should actually have the younger generation moving us forward in the 21st century. And it's not going to be good for America if we don't solve this problem.
So this dovetails nicely into why run for president. Tell us a little bit about that insider's look. What was that moment that you said, okay, I'm going to actually run for president?
It wasn't really a moment. It came over time. I invested in a lot of CEOs, and I asked my CEOs, I thought someone would run against Biden because he said he'd be a transitional figure, he would pass the torch. What if someone like me got in the race? And they immediately said, do you mean you really would do it? And I said, I don't know. This is really hard. You get put under a microscope. I probably will get killed. And I have gotten less than 1% of the vote in many states. I'm barely on the radar. But ultimately, all of my CEOs said, you should do it. You should actually run, because we need a voice who understands capital, who understands impact investing, to kind of put our issues on the radar. And so I woke up after one of the Republican debates where they were all yelling at each other, and Vivek especially. I agree with him on a lot of business policies, but it's just a continuation of the shouting and the screaming that makes America look, I'm embarrassed that the whole world is watching us, and that's the way our leaders are behaving? No. I'm going to run a professional campaign, talk about civility and how we can work together, and that's why I'm announcing this new organization today too, which has been about 6 months in the making, and I feel like I've achieved some type of media breakout. I don't know if it's enough of a media breakout for this organization to take off, but it might be.
And a big part of all that you do is this concept of common sense.
Yeah.
How have we lost it, and how are you trying to bring it back?
Well, I think 80% of us do believe in common sense policies, and we just don't have any politician who's willing to stand up there and say, Republicans are good, Democrats are good. I used to be a libertarian in college, and on the Green Party, I agree with them on environmental issues sometimes. Good ideas can come from all over. We need to take the best ideas, put them into effect. And usually when I get 2 minutes to talk to people like this, they're like, yes, that's actually what we need. Why doesn't anybody say that? Why isn't anybody doing that? And honestly, it's because in the primary system, you get pulled to the fringes, the Democratic Party activists that I've spoken with on the trail have said, you need to talk much more about this issue or that issue, and they're not about building up the economy, building up small business. 70% of new jobs come from small businesses. 65 to 70% of America is capitalism. Capitalism is the engine of growth, but very few Democrats are willing to talk about capitalism honestly and explain to their constituencies that this is how we make all the money and all the value that then we can give to people to help them pull themselves up. And so, it's a tough thing to explain in just a few words.
So I'm conscious of our time, but
Yeah.
you're announcing together today.
Yes.
What else can you share with us and the folks in the room about what that's going to look like for you?
Sure. So together, and this is a bit of a plea for you, you should go to togetherpurple.org. We are accepting both investments and donations. This is going to be the first B corporation and super PAC combined, I think will be the first ever that is going to be giving money to Democratic and Republican candidates. And if I can find a libertarian and green who believe in common sense policies, maybe I would do that too, that actually want to bring our country back to a common sense center. And, you know, we've got a lot of interest from, interestingly enough, because I won in American Samoa, like there are some athletes from American Samoa. There are some celebrities who also speak up for places like Puerto Rico, Marianas Islands, like the territories of the United States, Hawaii, that don't always get equal recognition. So we are in the process of raising money right now to go big with this, and between $3 and $4 trillion will be invested in this election, and a lot of it is going to be invested in hate. And I'm going to try to be, or we are going to try to be, like a small but growing voice for together, bringing us together amidst that hate.
I love that. I think we have time for one question from the audience.
I got one over there.
I'm not going to ask about immigration or anything. So,
Talk loud. Talk loud.
no worries, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I can speak very loudly. It's not a question about immigration, so no worries. I don't.
I love questions that are hard, so it's all good.
You mentioned having some support from your CEOs.
Yeah.
Community support, but in the long run, do you expect having to step back, significant pushback from your investors?
Not the question is about, do I expect significant pushback from my investors? And I would say no, but I'm really lucky. I don't think it's the same for everybody's investors in the room. I'm an impact investor, and we've raised 5 funds that have been focused on impact. So these are all of my LPs are family offices, insurance companies, banks, et cetera, that have committed some sleeve of their money to impact. So in my case, I'm lucky. But I think a lot of you have investors that are purely focused on profit. They haven't yet figured out a way to integrate. They have like another side of the house that's focused on these impact metrics and so forth, and they haven't integrated things. But I'm lucky that I haven't had that pushback from my investors.
I think we could take one more. Is that okay, Stacey?
Sure. Wow, a group of activist investors who are going to be quiet? I can't believe it. I can't believe
They
it.
don't have their second cup of coffee.
Well,
thank you very much, Jason. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and we wish you best of luck with Together.
thank you.